I would like to thank everyone for coming today. We're going to be live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn today. Um, and we have today's title is Speak Up, Speak About It, Speak Up About It. And it's part of the Cut It Out events that I usually do every year, where we go out into the barbershops and we go to the beauty salons, and we extend it into the faith community and the community, where I've been doing it for about a little over 10 years. So this is a part of the series where it's the last week in October. We do want to do a moment of silence. I'm going to have the Honorable Willie Lightfoot take us into it.
Well, good evening, everyone, and God bless each and every one of you. I pray that all of you are well and that your families are well. In lieu of domestic violence and this great event, I want to thank Gina Cruz for putting this together, and everyone here, my colleagues and those who are rested on this panel. I'd like to offer that those who are listening and those who are with us, if we would just take this opportunity for a moment of silence to honor all of the victims of domestic violence. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will do a little introduction regarding all the panelists today who are here with me, and I'm so gracious to have each and every one of you today here. We have the Honorable the Rochester City Councilman, at large City Councilman. He's the CEO and founder of Cut the Violence and Rock Against Gun Violence, a multi-business owner and author of The Intersection Between Pain and Purpose. Willie also has helped us in the past, myself and Quentin, with making sure that the Father's Day, National Father's Day Pledge is out in the community. So thank you, Willie. We will have joining us as well, Evangelist Lucila Matos. She's an evangelist, a chaplain, a true thriver, survivor of domestic violence, founder of the No More Domestic Violence Walk, and author of My Life Was Guarded for Christ. She volunteers her time at Out of the Darkness, which is a shelter for women who are formerly incarcerated, and is a committee member of SAFER. We also have Quentin. Hi, Quentin. He loves to be called Q. He's leading the nation and internationally on anti-violence activism. He's my co-founder of the National Father's Day Pledge and has been doing the pledge, what is it, 14 years, Quentin, or 15?
It'll be 15 in 2024.
Okay. He also is an interfaith trainer. He has partnered with Cornell University, ILR school, to work on doing workplace violence, bullying, and domestic violence training to unions. That's where I met Quentin back in 2004, I believe it was. And he also was a speaker at the very first United States of Women's Summit at the White House. So thank you, Quentin, for all you do. We also have Dr. Dana Williams. She's a pastor at Fire and Ice Ministry in Charlotte, North Carolina. She's also a multi-business owner. Well, and we got to get with them, they're multi-business owners. A multi-business owner owning a travel agency, a beauty salon, and also the just recently opened up D. Williams Suits, where you can get your suits here at North Lake Mall. Christian counselor and author of Deep Darkness and the founder of a women's transformation group called Butterfly Life. And she also last week, 2 weeks ago, did Can You Hear Me Now? Domestic Violence Awareness Campaign, where she advocated for domestic violence and did a walk. So again, thank you. Thank you, each and every one of you for coming. I truly appreciate you and everything you're doing in our community to make sure that not only just the community, but unions, churches, um, sororities, fraternities, and all around know the awareness of domestic violence. One of the things I will talk about today is some statistics. We'll continue. Domestic violence continues to rise nationally. In New York State, the controller released some information a couple of days ago where it increased 8.5 increase in New York City and 8.7 rise in New York State in domestic violence. In North Carolina, and I say North Carolina because I'm here in North Carolina right now. In North Carolina, it has increased from 2022, 35% homicides have increased, about 35% for women and 30% for men. Last year's totals were 47, and this year in September, there were already 53 murders, domestic violence homicides. As you know, some of you already know, every 9 seconds, a woman is assaulted and beaten. Study has suggested that 10 million children witness domestic violence annually. This another thing is the loss of wages and loss of paid work each year has increased to $8.0 million being paid each year due to loss of work for intimate partner violence and domestic violence. And you may hear me say a lot that she, but men face domestic violence too. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by their intimate partner. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by their intimate partner, and 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical beating, burning, strangling by intimate partner in a lifetime. So today we gathered here to speak up about it and turn social media purple. With our community leaders, advocates, and extraordinary change makers that have been bringing awareness regarding intimate partner violence to our communities, to our churches, to our chambers, all around, nationally and internationally and locally. So thank you again. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Putting them, I know that do you have any stats on the churches or anything?
I'm sorry, say it again.
Any stats on the churches that I might have missed or anything that you would like to say regarding the churches? I know we wanted to spread some kind of awareness before starting and doing questions.
I don't have stats will be right now, but I would just say that when I started my organization out in Brooklyn, Flatbush, and Crown Heights, when we talked to people in the community to figure out how people view the issue of domestic violence, in Brooklyn, as many of you may know, is a very diverse community. You got folks from all over the world, Caribbean, Africa, so a lot of folks that come to the United States really to escape sometimes violence from their countries of origin. But one of the things that we ask the people in that community is domestic violence an issue? And if it is, where would you like to go to deal with it? Are you going to systems? Are you going to police? Things like that. But that community, really undocumented community, they weren't really looking at the police or the courts to deal with this issue because they were to be deported. They wanted to go to the faith institutions. So with that, we really needed to listen. And they wanted to go there because that was a place of sanctuary for them. So the church or the mosque or the synagogue is really a place for sanctuary for a lot of people. And they go there for safety as well. But I think that, and what we'll talk about tonight, is that many churches and faith institutions aren't necessarily equipped to deal with the issue of domestic violence. So our goal is to really partner with them and build their capacity in terms of like the social justice and the social issues around domestic violence, and to add some theology to people's experiences as well, and correct theology, because a lot of times, people will use the church or the Bible or whatever book of faith to manipulate and misinterpret, to garner power and control over something.
Yes. Thank you, Quentin. I have a few questions that I have set aside and sent on to all of our guest speakers today. The Honorable Willie Lightfoot, I want to first thank you for being here. I have 2 to 3 questions for you. Again, thank you for being here. I wanted to know, what is your why for doing all the great work you have been doing, not only for domestic violence, but also for, and doing anti-violent work as well?
Well, once again, thank you for having me, and I give honor to all of the other panelists here with me. My why, I think, is very simple, because I love people and I love humanity, right? And so that is my why. I want to see everyone having the best quality of life that they possibly can have, and my quest is to ensure that everyone is being treated equal and fairly, and has an opportunity to reach their greatest potential. And so in that leads me to this work, which I believe many of us would may agree that this type of work you're kind of called to, if you will. You have to have a passion. You have to have a calling. You have to have an anointing to do this type of work. It's a very daunting work. It's tireless work. Oftentimes, it's not as most recognized, if you will, supported. Typically, there's a lot of lack of resources in this work, and there's so much work to do. There's enough work for everybody in this work. And it's ongoing. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365, and it's all over the world. This work impacts everybody. And so that's my why.
Thank you. And I'm glad you said it impacts everyone, because some people think this doesn't happen to them. So I'm glad that you said it happens, not just to me, to you, Black and brown, white, Indian. It happens no matter what your race is, no matter what your gender is, no matter who you are. It happens to everyone. And it even happens in the workplace. And I'm so honored to have been able to have someone like you bring that into the city of Rochester. And I wish that more people would do a customized training like you have done in the city of Rochester. Can you share with us how what you've done with the city of Rochester regarding workplace violence and domestic violence?
Yes. Thank you for the question. And I would say what we done, because it was a collective effort with your advocacy, Gina, and your support. But what we noticed a few years back, actually it was June of 2020, during the height of the pandemic, we knew that the numbers, you were quoting statistics before, we know that the numbers for statistics around violence in general, domestic violence, gun violence, all types of violence, we saw increase significantly throughout the pandemic and even post-pandemic. And so what we recognized in the city of Rochester, me being a local city council person here, is that we had employees that we did not have a policy in regards to paid leave for domestic violence in regards to employees. So one of the things that we instituted to establish a city policy here for paid leave for victims of domestic violence. And what this did is it not only addressed the potential victims, meaning the employee themselves, but this policy allowed the city of Rochester employees who are victims of domestic violence to take paid leave. And the policy also allowed employees to use paid leave to seek medical attention or counseling for immediate family members related to domestic violence too. And that was big because oftentimes many policies in many communities will address the victim or the employee, but oftentimes the employee family members may be going through something and they need to take time off to help that family member escape or to help that family member get the resources or the help that they need. And sometimes individuals can't take that time off, paid time off, to do that, or don't have the time to do that in fear of them losing their job. And so we wanted to address that. And we did that through a policy that is now is available to all of over 2,500 of our employees for the city of Rochester, that they're able to, not only does it impact them, and we even extended the policy that even if you don't have time, let's say you don't have holiday time or time, that time will still, paid leave will still be approved by authorized unpaid leave. And so you don't have to worry about particularly losing your job in the event that you are a victim of domestic violence and or one of your family members.
Wow, that is awesome. Quentin, what do you think about that? I met Quentin doing domestic violence, workplace violence, so he's been doing that for years. And one of the things that he stressed about was making sure it was customized. So, Quentin, anything you want to say about that?
First of all, thank you to you, Reverend Lightfoot, Councilman Lightfoot as well, and your colleagues for really putting that initiative forward, because that is the work Gene and I have been trying to push for quite a long time, and to really, protect survivors and getting the people that are connected to the survivor or that incident or incidents of violence, the help that they need to, one, heal, and to also be able to continue to live, and have, income and not be, because there's a thing about domestic violence and people think only people that are struggling with poverty have domestic violence issues, but domestic violence causes poverty, right? If somebody has to leave a job or not show up at work, or is just kind of not in a position to continue to work, that creates a potentially poverty for that family or that community. So that is really amazing work, and I give you all, a lot of praise, and very grateful for that work, and hopefully we can model that all across New York State and this country. So I think you all have done a very powerful thing for survivors, the families they're connected to, and even folks that are doing harm. I think we're all kind of connected to this, and a lot of things need to be done to interrupt the violence and prevent it. So thank you.
I had to ask him that, Councilman Lightfoot, because the fact that you attached it not just to the victim, okay, you attached it to the families of the victim. That is huge. That's making sure that they know there are services available for you in the community, here at work, where we hear you. Okay, did you hear what I said, Dr. Dana? We hear you. It will not be silenced. So yes, one more thing, just one more question. I know I said it was only 2 questions, but I have one more. How has the work that you've been doing impacted the community? Because I know there's so much more that you're doing besides this. Can you tell us a little bit about what else you're doing in the community?
Yeah, I'm also doing, work around gun violence, and we typically, a lot of this domestic violence also interchanges with the gun violence, because oftentimes that's what we see. The tragedy of domestic violence also sometimes can lead to people's committing homicides. to that person that they're in relationship with. And we had some very high profile cases here in Rochester. One recently last year with a Greece off-duty police officer who killed two ladies and then herself. And it was found out to be a domestic, so it was a murder-suicide situation, and it was a domestic violence situation. And so that brought in the gun violence work, which I do a lot around gun violence and violence. Violence takes many forms, you know what I mean? And so I started the Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition here locally, which basically is a group that just comes together to educate, advocate, and eradicate against gun violence within our community. We've also seen a rise of gun violence across the country as well, too, during the pandemic and post-pandemic. And so we just recently came out with a Rock Against Gun Violence Coalition Solution Action Plan, which is easily found on the website, cityofrochester.gov/think about it. It's fresh off the press. It came out about 2 weeks ago, and it lists 12 solutions that we believe can help eradicate gun violence within not only our community, but other communities too. So we hope to use this as a model. We're working to implement this to help to eradicate gun violence. And we also just recently came out with a gun trace data report from Brady National that also is lists and answers a decade-old question in this community of where are the guns coming from. And so we have the data now that's showing where these crime guns are coming from within our community. And we're hoping to use this data to help us also create solutions and put on our toolbox to help eradicate gun violence as well too. So that's some of the work that we're doing here that's kind of intertwined with this domestic violence. And we're just coming against the form of violence in any form that it comes in, we're against. And so that's the work that we do both in city government through policy, practices, and procedures. I do that work through, the conversations and the mentoring and the education I do in my barbershop. And then I also have these conversations from the pulpit and from my church, from a spiritual perspective as well, too.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. We really appreciate you and all the hard work you've been doing. Can we use that model if we wanted to bring it to North Carolina as a question?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I will send upon ending this call, I will send you links to the solution action plan. And I will also send you, which I think you already have, a copy of the policy, practice, and procedure for domestic paid leave. So you can share that with whomever you like.
Thank you. And then maybe have you come down and help us out. My next person, whenever I call on him, he is always there. He's a wealth of knowledge. He never tells me no unless he's really booked or in another country speaking. He's a wealth of knowledge and resources. Thank you, Quentin or Q, for being here today. I really, really appreciate you. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
I have the same question for you too. Who or what encouraged you to become a change maker in anti-violence? What was your why?
Right. Before you do that, I just remember the stat for the faith work. 1 in 4 in the pews is experiencing domestic violence. So that's like 25% of folks that are coming to church. And I don't know if you can speak to this, Reverend Lightwood, and also Dr. Kathy Williams, like in terms of who's going to church mostly right now is women. So I think they're the number one person in the congregation. So they're 1 in 4 experiencing domestic violence. So I think just because of that stat, faith institutions need to respond or address the issue or talk about it, and people resources they need to be safe and free. But yeah, my why, that's a great question, Gina, because my why is really different. Like I started doing this, I've been doing this work for 20 something years now, it's 20 some odd years now. And my why was always that I was a community activist, I was a student activist, all of these things. So I was always about, the underdog and the oppressed and those who are being treated unfairly, right? And I was an athlete and all these different things. So I was, in kind of a unique space, folks that cared about the issue and cared about women. And my mom, single mother. I'm in Washington, D.C. right now at the National Coalition for Domestic Violence Conference, but I'm from New York City. And, so my mother raising two Black boys in New York City on her own, right? So part of that was like, okay, I knew that existed, but then the second story is really about my mom and the fact that the reason why my folks got divorced wasn't because of domestic violence. And I only learned this 30 years later from my mom, right? But doing the work had me question and think about what was going on with my mom and the decisions that she made as a single mom, again, in New York City, the things she did do and the things that she didn't do. Everything kind of made sense to me when she called me in to go to a session with her, and she told me the whole story of my father and told me the story of her and really the story of my brother and I as well. So, and in that story, I've worked with men and fathers and many of the men that probably all of us work with, coming out from incarceration and dealing with gun violence, all those intersections. I'm glad you said that, Reverend Lightfoot, that, it's not a single issue, it's a multiple layered intersectional issue. And so I work with men and fathers in that capacity, and also with survivors and children who witness violence. So really rounded kind of experience in it. But when my mother told me this, then I realized why this work. She asked me, why do I do the work? And she told me the story of my father and the situation. And so essentially, my father was all the men I work with in their relationships rolled up in one. Right? When she told me the experiences, and then when she told me what she experienced from my father, my mother became my client first time. You know what I mean? I saw her differently, and I saw her experiences of many of the survivors I work with rolled up in one again, and understanding, my life became full, opened up. So I understood a lot of things about growing up. I don't remember the things being witnessing it as a young child, because I was like 2 or 3 the last time I saw my father. But my mother holding on to the story and not telling us allowed me to do the work with men. Because if she had told me all the levels of violence that she experienced from men, my relationship might have been different in my work. So she allowed me to see that men are redeemable. So I would say my mother is the second part of my story why I do this work. So thanks.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. How can we encourage our organizations to have more customized trainings and make a space for those facing domestic violence to open up? And I know Councilman Lightfoot talked about it, but can you tell us a little bit more about?
Yeah, I think one of the places that we probably spend most of our time, and many of us on this call, probably more than 8 hours a day, probably 12 to 20, sometimes 20 hours a day in our work. So, we have to really think about what work means to us in our communities and us as individuals and parents, fathers and mothers, that we spend a lot of time there. So we have to realize that workplaces need to understand that the people that work for them are experiencing these forms of violence, and we have to address those needs. And we want to create safe spaces and environments. And for many people who are struggling with these issues, the workplace is that, right? Hopefully it is, if it's not also demonstrating workplace violence and bullying behavior, the work that we were doing through Cornell and Rochester and Ithaca, all those connections that people are going through and layers of violence that they experience. So I think it's really important. And it's not a one size fits all. You have to really go in there, see what the work environment is and what the work culture is, and what about it that says treating men and women differently is okay, on a basic level. salaries for the same level of work. If men are getting paid more, you're reinforcing this idea that women aren't as valuable as men and that they are to be seen as objects and property in a lot of cases. So I think it's just really important for workplaces to do that assessment and think about the positions that they have. Are they predominantly male positions? Is that really necessary, or what is that really about? Or is that about reinforcing the kind of status quo, men are the breadwinners and make all the major decisions and things like that? But what that attitude and that environment does is it spills over into the home, spills over into the community, that I am more valuable than you are. And what domestic violence really is really about power and control, gaining it or maintaining it, right? A lot of it is about attitudes and belief systems and male socialization. A lot about, Reverend Lightfoot, not myself, and how we were raised is about us being in positions of power. Right. And we have to separate that from, leadership and being leaders in our families and our communities from being harmful to someone to gain that leadership. Right. So I think workplaces are just really key places where people spend a lot of time and they earn their money and their value to provide for their family. So like the church too, it's a place that people go to and seek assistance and help and resources. And, Gina, this from the work that we've done for many years now, a healthy work environment also means a healthy community and healthy family. So people are autonomous, right? And can make decisions on their own or in communion with someone, fair conversation with someone. You're going to have a very healthy family and individuals and a better quality of life. So I think that's the ultimate, workplaces can contribute to the quality of life that people are experiencing, regardless if this is seemingly a personal thing that happens between couples, but it's shown in the workplace all the time, right? So I think it's, in a nutshell, it's really an important place that could take this on if they really want to care about the people and the products or services that they provide for people in the community.
Thank you for that. One of the things I learned from that training that you guys gave us, Casey and you, back in 2004, I believe it was to make sure we had the resources available. Because sometimes a person like me might not want to tell my boss that I'm facing these issues or domestic violence or any of that, but having some type of resource available saying, you can call EAP, you can call the domestic violence shelter, the 800 number, having them in the office where if I were to go in there and I'm dealing with this situation, then I would be able to see, hey, this person cares, my boss cares. It starts there. It starts with something that small as a little card that you might have that says, okay, here you go, the 800 number for the National Coalition of Domestic Violence. Here's EAP number. They address domestic violence. So, and the other thing I learned is just customizing. We have too many workplace violence right now that it's the same thing, but we don't all do the same work. Our workplace is not the same. So making sure it's customized, inviting the unions, inviting EAP, inviting security, inviting all those your line staff, administration, everyone to come together and create that model. And in saying that, I appreciate you teaching me that because I was able to take that to the county and be able to create a workplace violence that was customized for that, for just the work of counselors and social workers, but not just them, administration, union workers, and church. So with all the work you've been doing, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that you continue to continue every single day to just surprise me with a different thing that you do. I mean, look at you now. Today you're here at the National Coalition of Domestic Violence talking. So how has your work that you've done continued to create change, not only just in legislation and churches and unions, but in organizations as well,
like fraternities and sororities and things like that?
Yeah, that's I appreciate that, Gina. And we've been in this partners in this for a long time. And I think the fact that men and women are coming together to deal with this issue, I think that in itself is still new and emerging. Because domestic violence is always seen as a women's issue, but it's really it's a men's issue as well, because it's about our behavior, our attitudes, our belief systems, but it's ultimately a community issue, right? So the community needs to step up and create safety and accountability. And I'm here today speaking about transformative justice, or known as restorative justice to many people, but really, what is needed by community to heal, right, and help the survivor heal, and hold if it's a male that's doing violence, accountable, but not just hold them accountable in a revenge type of way, just lock them up, but like to give them the help to heal, so that violence doesn't continue generation to generation, because that's one of the things that we pass down is trauma, but we could also pass down resiliency. And I think the work of my fellow panelists here, working on that intersection, like gun violence in particular, do a lot of work around that. And that's why I saw you last time, Reverend Lightfoot. I can't remember which call it was, but we want to call, I think, addressing gun violence. And so I think it's important to see how these things are connected. Violence is on a continuum. And as a result, people and advocates and people like us are pushing legislation, everything that's anything that's necessary to can contribute to interrupting the cycles of violence or preventing it. We're doing from the policy level to just kind of in the workplace. We work with unions. Unions cared about the people, and the corporations cared about their property. So we kind of humanize this for them, and to make them see, if you don't care about this issue around domestic violence, you're losing X amount of money every single day. That's when they started perking up and said, "Oh, I'm losing money. It's impacting the workplace. Let me put some energy and resources into this work." So on that level, on this, systems are very tough, and they say decadent and strong, but in our own ways, we're holding them accountable, right? And I think we made a lot of strides around getting money coming down from the federal government around gun violence and even domestic violence over years, but then also looking at it together, right? And domestic violence and gun violence isn't just about someone doing harm, have a gun, but those children who witness that harm are more apt to be involved with gun and gang violence, right? So it's not just that somebody has a weapon. It's a major concern because, people that struggling with domestic violence have guns, they usually use them, right? But it's also the impact it has on the witnesses and the community, et cetera. So I think we made strides in that. What Reverend Lightfoot is doing up in Rochester is amazing. That's one sign of it. Advocates have always kind of pushed, elected officials to the task around what's needed in our communities, from the legislation to the workplace. Shane and I have done work around setting up policies in workplaces, not just having a book on the shelf with dust on it, but dusting it off and implementing it. I do work, and I have my organization Connect, we're in New York City, and I do work nationally and globally. So the fact that we have models coming right out of New York State or New York City, or even Carolina, which is a big domestic violence state, that we can replicate in other parts of the country and even internationally, because it's about men, it's about how we're socialized, the conditions that we live in. And that is, it may look different territorially, culturally, but at the heart of it, again, this is about power and control, right? And male violence. And male violence impacts men 3 times more than it impacts women. So phenomenon male violence is violence against women and girls and domestic violence, but most of it is about men's violence against other men. So we have to look at that and address that. So I think we're making, strides, and all of us on this panel in multiple different ways. Sometimes it seems small and isolated, but it's making it, and people are watching. I'm watching Reverend Lightfoot. I'm watching Reverend Dr. Kathy Williams. So we're watching, and we're hearing, and we're learning from each other. And so hopefully what's going on in Rochester can happen downstate in New York and even further down south in Carolina. So that's the work we're doing. I mean, I could go on and on and on, but that is the work. It's happening, and it's doing in small ways. But we've got to bring it together every once in a while.
Thank you, Quentin. Okay. I also just want to say thank you because I see that you always have even before the pandemic, you've always had those roundtables for men and women, so and church-based. So thank you. And speaking of interfaith, I want to thank Dr. Dana Williams. I praise God I met this queen, y'all. I am so grateful for her. And I thank her for being here tonight. I know she has a busy schedule, but I just want to say thank you for being here. You all have busy schedule, but Dr. Dana, what I truly loved the other day, and I really appreciate, is that not only did she have us as Christians there, but she brought the Muslims in as well. Okay. She brought more faiths together to do a walk, to talk about domestic violence, to tell our stories. So, what is your why, Dr. Dana? Why did you become an advocate for domestic violence?
If I can truly be honest, my why was not my why, because if you would have asked me, was I in an abusive relationship or anything like that, I would have said no. And it was because when I was in an abusive relationship, I would fight back. So to me, I wasn't in an abusive relationship. And I don't know, Gina, if you know the woman when we did the last march. Can you hear me now? And it is to make a voice in the earth, to be that voice for the silent voice in the earth. And the woman came up to me after we marched and she said, I didn't even know I had been in an abusive relationship. And first of all, you asked me a question, but I want to take a step back for a second and just say to the Honorable Lightfoot Councilman and to Quentin, oh my gosh, I have been here. I was like, oh, I want to say something. Oh, that's so good. Everything that you shared are redeemable. You didn't say what kind of man. So to me, that says all men are redeemable. The perpetrator as well as the victim is redeemable. And when we are putting these programs in place, we don't just want to put programs in place for the victim, but a lot of times people don't want to hear that there can be help for the perpetrator, but there needs to be help for them, because as long as there is a perpetrator, there will always be a victim. It doesn't matter if you take that person from one place, they'll just go to another place. So when we start putting programs in place, not just for the victim, but for the perpetrator as well, then we begin to bring some of those numbers down with families that are deciding, I'm not going to leave my husband. I'm not going to leave my wife, even though they're abusive. Well, if you're not going to leave, how about we have a program that can help you stay together as a family? The other thing that blessed me so much, Quentin and the Honorable Lightfoot Councilman, was you said that many in the body of Christ, a lot of times they're using Bible as a form of control. And the first thing that dropped in my spirit was slavery. It is like a form of slavery. And the Lord took me to the scripture, Galatians 5:1. This is why we do the work. This is why we stand together. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. God doesn't want us to be bound. He doesn't want us in slavery any longer. And my problem was I was in an abusive relationship and didn't know I was, because as long as I was fighting back, what do you mean domestic violence? And a young lady came up to me, Gina, after the campaign, and thank you so much for putting this together, because I have been so blessed on tonight. A young lady came up to me and she said, after we marched, after we talked, after we made a noise in the earth, and she said, I didn't know that I was in an abusive relationship. Then she said this, Quentin, because my focus this year was the children. And she said, I would ask my son, why are you so angry? What happened? She said, what you helped me to understand was he's so angry because of what happened when I was in that abusive relationship. I never thought about the screams. I never thought about how he felt. She said, now I can go back and apologize for the position I put him in. She said, I never even thought about it. When we make a sound in the earth, when we stand together, when we come together, when we march, can you hear me now? It's all about making a sound in the earth. Some people say to me, Dana, this should be your platform. God didn't tell me this should be my platform, but God did tell me wherever I need to get at work, whomever I need to connect with, wherever I can come together with somebody to put the little I have with the little that they have, then we can make a huge impact in the earth. And so, even talking about the workplace, I don't even know if you know this, Gina, but this year I was faced with a situation on my job where I was emotionally abused on my job. It was very challenging and it was kind of like pushed to the side. And I didn't want to make a loud sound about it. I didn't want to make any noise. But then the Spirit of the Lord said to me, if you don't, that person just going to go to the next person. And then you'll be sitting back saying, I know they're dealing with what I dealt with. So I had to speak up. And as a result of me speaking up, not only was it stopped, but that person was displaced because even though they didn't believe me, he came back and did it to somebody else. So had I not started the process, then he would have continued to go on and on and on. But we have to speak up. We have to let people know it's okay to speak up. And let me tell you, Gina, we didn't discuss this, but did I feel shameful at the time? Yes. And I even said, God, why do I have to go through this at my workplace? But I thank God for the support I had from my husband. I thank God that he had taught me to stand strong. And a lot of people don't want to come outside of the four walls of the church. Let me tell you, we go to church, that's the tabernacle. We go to get what we need to take it out to the community. And so being a pastor, also I have something to give to the community. I have something to give in the workplace. Why? My why is so that somebody can be set free for freedom, no longer yoked in bondage or slavery. And if it ever happens to them again, being okay to say, you know what? I don't have to stand for that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ooh, I think you answered one of these questions, but how can we more faith leaders speak up about domestic violence or in religious organizations?
Well, when we do Purple Sunday, the more we get Purple Sunday out, there is purpose for wearing purple and educating the people, having the information to give that you gave me, not just speaking about it, but having information to put in people's hands. Because when the Muslim community, when the nation came and they marched with us, one of the things they asked for, Gina, was what can you give me in my hand that I'm able to bring to my community? So we didn't just come to the body of Christ. We didn't just come to the community. We also took it to the nation. And so the nation of Islam. So we are enlarging our territory. Also, I have a son in Pakistan. So it's not just here that we're making a voice in the earth, that we're making a sound in the earth when we are marching. It's in Louisiana. And so the churches are getting involved in Louisiana in Purple Sunday. And then they're educating the people on what does domestic violence or abuse look like. We can talk about it, but what does abuse look like?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for that. And then I
Yes.
believe you answered the last one where how has the work with Butterfly Life impacted your community?
For me, it's when what me the most is when somebody comes in my inbox and says, I've been struggling for 11 years. What do I do? Me and my children are in the home. What do I do? We come up with a plan. We set goals. We educate the community. When I first started this work about 6 years ago, the marching and talking about domestic violence and no longer being silent, women coming up and saying, thank you for speaking out. I thought because they was a leader. I thought because they were a pastor. I thought because of who they were, I couldn't speak out about my pain. But now I know it's okay to speak out about my pain. It's okay because my voice may help somebody else. Thank you. So it's speaking, is being not being ashamed to be the voice for the voiceless for me.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Any last words coming from you or any other, Dr. Dana, anything else you want to add or say before we end today?
I'll say one thing, Gina. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. It's also Hispanic Heritage Awareness Month. It's a lot of different
The
things,
list goes on.
and because of breast cancer is a terrible thing. We all have people we know or in our families or friends that experience that. So a lot of times we go towards that pink ribbon that everyone wears, but wear it together. Wear the purple one with the pink one, and I can't remember what color it might be the flag for the Hispanic Heritage Month. But all those things you can wear together because they're all correlated. There's a connection between all of them. They say that people who experience domestic violence are less apt to their body biochemistry is like they're less apt to fight off disease, right? So a lot of times it white blood cells are, trying to attack disease, and you left more vulnerable to other forms of things. So a lot of times, like STIs, can be more susceptible to HIV and AIDS in that way. You're more just there's so many connections to it, and there's also a connection between domestic violence and breast cancer as well. So let's not get one. It's not just about October. I think, like you mentioned, someone is abused every 8 seconds or 11 seconds or something like
9
that.
seconds. Yeah.
So if you do the math, how long we've been on this call, right? I do work in Brazil. I mean, 8 women die a day from domestic violence, right? So it's prevalent and like I think Reverend Lightfoot mentioned, it's a global issue from Brooklyn to Brazil, from Georgia to Ghana. It's a global issue.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to kind of take this on and not just care about ones that we know or related to us that are dealing with it. We got to care about everyone who's struggling with this, and that's how we move the needle. So I'll just leave us with that, and I appreciate you, Gina. Much love to you and our panelists. You all are doing great work.
Thank you. Thank you. Pastor Dr. Willie Lightfoot. Councilman Lightfoot. Any last words?
I would just say that my last words will probably echo Dr. Williams, preacher, prophet, evangelist. She preached tonight. She blessed my soul. Everybody is redeemable, and that's what I got. And being free, is very important. And I think the work that we do is to realize that no one is without redemption. And at the end of the day, we're hoping and we're praying and we're working to do this work to see that only can those be free from the abuse, but also those free from being abusers. And so I think there's hope for everybody. and so I leave with hope, that whom the Son can set free is free indeed.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else, Dr. Dana?
The only thing I wanted to share, which is so powerful, is us being here together and standing for the same reason. Because unity is key and there is power in numbers. And when we are on one accord and we stand together, even though my schedule may be busy at times, this is so close to my heart. Freedom for all. And whatever, whatever reason God called us, because Councilman Lightfoot said, you got to be called to this work.
Yes.
I didn't want to take on this assignment. I didn't want the responsibility. And my book, Deep Darkness, tells a lot about my experiences in life. It was by the grace of God, Councilman Lightfoot, that I didn't pull the trigger. And one of the ladies that I walk with that march in Louisiana, she did pull the trigger. So, but God kept us both. And so we are grateful. And we thank God that the numbers are going down and that awareness is being brought to our communities.
Yeah.
Amen.
Thank you for speaking that into existence. So I want to thank you guys again for coming on as my special guest to speak about it and to cut it out and talk about domestic violence. Let's give you guys a hand. I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. We close today. I first want to inform you that if you or someone you know is dealing with domestic violence, there is help out there. Please call the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. You can also go to their website at www.thehotline.org, and all the information you talk about at this line, okay, can be in English and in Spanish, and it's all confidential. Also, there are many local services. I know in Rochester, there is Willow. Here, there is Safe Alliance and many other organizations. Reach out. Get the help you need, whether it's for yourself or a family member. Have an amazing week. Stay safe. Speak about it. And we will be back next month to talk about domestic violence again, the intersection of domestic violence and depression. We have a few guest speakers to talk about that, and also bruised but not broken. So again, thank you, and we appreciate each and every one of you being here. And when we get questions, I will make sure to send them out to you. Thank you for being here today, and God bless. Good night.